Hi guys, and welcome back to SwitchUp. Today we're going to be playing the one and only Final Fantasy VII on the Nintendo Switch. I'm a little bit excited. Thanks to all of you who've become a part of this solid community of gamers that we've built together as we reached 25,000. That's incredible. Glen and I can't thank you enough. What is that? I asked my older brother, peering over his shoulder as he watched a train scream through the air of the futuristic cityscape. In all honesty, I don't think either of us really appreciated what we were looking at. That 129 hours later, we'd do it all again together. It was about more than the story we experienced. These were our characters named by us, and this was our narrative. How then does Final Fantasy transfer over to the Nintendo Switch all these decades later? Let's find out. Final Fantasy VII follows the story of Cloud, a member of an elite group known as Soldier, who has wound up working as a mercenary for a group of freedom fighters working to subvert the powers that rule over them, which are led by the president of Shinra. They're sucking the very lifeblood, the Mako energy, from the planet to power the ever-growing metropolis. The group who hire you are planning to destroy the power plants and in turn, save the planet. Shinra paint them as the terrorists, and this sentiment is shared by many throughout the world you inhabit. In many ways, this Final Fantasy was a game before its time. The world we live in today knows better than any how one person's terrorism is another's freedom fighter. What every good story needs is an excellent villain, and Sephiroth fills the role perfectly. Everything about him is cool, but what really makes him stand out is the theme tune, which resonates whenever his presence is on screen. Throughout the game, his story is fleshed out as much as your own, and in fact, you have more in common than initially meets the eye, as another human touched by the Mako energy. What Final Fantasy VII does so well, though, is provide the player just enough information to keep them hooked, but also undermines our preconceptions and judgments at several points in the tale. The branching story covers a multitude of characters, families, and tribes, and spans an entire globe. While, as is always the case with Final Fantasy games, this can be a little long-winded at times, but I guarantee you, these are the characters you will grow to love and genuinely care for. The pasts and backstories of each will be elaborated and developed, but the standout component for me are the interactions between your party. The initial tension to be replaced by a real affection and, dare I say it, love. Story for me scores 19 out of 20. Nothing's perfect, but I love the narrative of 7, and having that on my Nintendo Switch screen is genuinely a joy for me. You control Cloud from a fixed isometric viewpoint that shifts depending on what is currently on screen. The issue with this has always been that left won't necessarily take you in the same direction on any two screens. After an adjustment period, you certainly learn to wait a few milliseconds before moving. In some areas, you will encounter the infamous random battles that still divide gamers to this day. I personally hated these, as you ended up almost cringing when that battle music sounds. Having the ability though to essentially remove these with the Switch version is all well and good, but they were almost essential to later battles, as without that prerequisite grind, some fights become nigh on impossible. As some of these are optional and gift you with summons you otherwise cannot attain in the game, it's recommended to really just grin and bear it and do the grind with this one. Fights are a turn-based affair, with characters able to take turns using the now commonplace physical, magical, or item-based attacks and buffs. If a partner dies, using a Phoenix down to bring them back becomes vital, and as such, managing your gear a key component of the game. Magic spells get stronger as you play, but the real fireworks come in the form of the summons. These are vastly powerful spells which summon deities to perform one-time attacks against your current foe. The problem with these is that while they look spectacular the first few times, after the 100th time they're a real pain and you end up leveling your normal magics more, in part just to avoid these load times. Plus, Demi was an awesome spell to be fair. Thankfully, the Nintendo Switch has included the same useful speed-up mechanic to essentially remove this problem. I forgot how annoying it was until about 4 hours in, when I suddenly remembered the speed-up mechanic is there now and the experience felt so much better for it. What I loved about the game originally is still here in terms of combat, and that is the materia system. In my opinion, the best system to be used for magics and summons in possibly any game I've played since. It allows you to collect and purchase materia, which can be combined in various ways to increase their potency. With this, you can then create unique builds, if you will. For example, one materia will allow the host to cure, but combined with the more rare all materia will cure the entire group. Trust me when I say later in the game you'll spend hours tweaking these for specific fights. Between stages, to save is essential, and it's only from these that you can use certain beneficial items such as tents, which allow your entire party to rest and recuperate. If you've played any of the other games, then this will be familiar to you. Boss fights have always been a staple of the series, and they really dialed these up with VII. Not all of them hit the mark though, with some of the latter fights taking literal hours to finish and just being more frustrating than fun. After the initial very linear segments of the game, it opens up, allowing you more freedom to explore an overworld, with several vehicles becoming available to traverse the land more quickly. When on foot in the overworld map, you can save at any point when not in combat, and a map gives you some rudimentary information about your surroundings. There are a ton of mini games and experiences throughout this world, which go a long way to giving it a little more life, as most of the NPCs' interactions are quite limited. Now that being said, those small moment-to-moment interactions are what really make the game what it is. Gameplay and controls are good, but rely heavily on your investment in the story. Some cheap irritations can be almost entirely negated with the speed-up mechanics, but grinding is a fundamental part of this experience. Later in the game, this can become quite a nuisance, but in my now 150 hours spent with it, only a handful of times did these core mechanics ever annoy me. For me, they are a part of the experience, and having the option to essentially turn off these battle animations or speed up the game, I guess having that option is going to turn more people onto the game than it is off. I'm really not happy though with the inclusion of the cheat system, which has also been seen in the recent Final Fantasy IX release. It's completely unnecessary in my opinion, and will only serve to detract from the experience for any players who choose to use them. Overall though, the game holds up nicely. Gameplay for me is as excellent as ever.
10 out of 20.
Black borders, low resolution static backdrops rather than the upscaled alternatives available on PC do nothing to turn me off of what I still believe is one of the best looking RPGs of all time. Visual style goes just as far as pixel count here with the higher resolution character models, and when in handheld mode the game really does shine. And it all adds up to a very pleasant experience on Switch. But the real kicker, the thing that sticks with you long after your trip into the clouds or the journey to the depths of a mecha reactor, is the soundtrack. The music is astounding, from the upbeat high-tempo beginnings through to the more melancholic and onto the optimism of the tribal theme. It is an outstanding audio package that you will remember for, well, a lifetime I guess. Performance is decent in all formats and ticks along nicely. I adore having this in portable though. Visuals score 16 out of 20. Those black borders and the lower res backdrops are an eyesore on a 60-inch LED, but they look just crispy enough in handheld mode. Audio scores 19 out of 20. The only negatives here are some of the sound effects being a touch low quality, but that really is picking at nits. The game costs £12.79, $15.99 or €15.99. And let's be totally honest here, this is going to sell like the hottest of hot cupcakes at this price. It's cheaper than 9 by a good chunk, and while some preferred that game, not I, said the wolf, 7 is my bag every day of the week. Yes, it's old, and yes, there are some irritations here, but a game of this magnitude and length at around about 120 hours, if you really go for everything, then you're looking at about, what, £1 for every 10 hours of gameplay? That is a statistic I can definitely get on board with, however speculative and or incorrect that might be. There are some minor quality of life improvements here as well, and yes, undoubtedly, you can find it cheaper on other platforms, but Final Fantasy VII on the Nintendo Switch, I think that's all I need to say. Value scores 19 out of 20. As I'm sure you've gathered, I adore this game. I always have. The Switch seems to me to be the perfect homecoming for it and is hands down one of the best ways to enjoy it. Sat huddled in your corner with a set of headphones on or dissolving a long commute, it scores a SwitchUp score of 91%. It is an absolutely essential RPG. This, in my opinion, is one of the best of all time. If you've never played this, I implore you to try it. Just don't expect to win your first Chocobo race. Don't ask. Thanks to our Patreons and all of you who subscribe to the channel. If you enjoyed the review, please leave a comment down below and let's get the nostalgia train rolling. For all things Switch all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers guys. See ya!